2 years of silence, then one photo gets online. They immediately booked flights, demanding I sell my house to save my sister and her $42,000 debt. They just didn't know the house they planned to sell was a $10 million villa held in a trust. My name is Lucy White. I'm 29 years old, and for the last several years, I've been a senior compliance analyst at Northwind Therapeutics. It's a pharmaceutical company. My job is to live in the details, to read the regulations that no one else wants to read, and to build the systems that keep us from getting sued into oblivion. It's methodical, precise, and I'm very, very good at it. My life in Michigan was, for all intents and purposes, stable. I had a clean, quiet apartment, a good salary, and a career path. I also lived a 30-minute drive from my father, Greg, and my stepmother, Lorraine. This 30-minute drive was a line I crossed every single Saturday, a commute from my world into theirs. It wasn't a formal invitation, it was a default. It was an expectation that had solidified over years, hardening into a non-negotiable part of the family structure. I was the one who did the grocery run on Saturday morning, my cart filled with items I didn't eat, and I was the one who spent the afternoon in their kitchen, cooking a meal for the entire family, for my dad, for Lorraine, for my older stepsister Paige, and for Paige's 2 sons, who were a swirling vortex of noise and sticky fingers. Paige was 32 and ran an online boutique, which was a generous term for her perpetually failing business of selling imported fast fashion at a markup. Her life was a constant, self-inflicted drama, lost shipments, angry customers, and a financial status that always teetered on the edge of disaster, which, of course, was never her fault. My Saturdays began with the sound of my father's television. Greg, a man who had been vibrant once, was now a permanent fixture on the beige recliner. His eyes glazed over, watching sports, any sports. It didn't matter the season. The only time he looked up was when I'd hand him a plate. Lorraine, on the other hand, was painfully present. She would orbit the kitchen while I worked, sipping a glass of Chardonnay and offering feedback. When I tried, early on, to talk about my work, her eyes would do this slow, dismissive roll. Compliance God, Lucy, it sounds so dry. So many rules. She'd say this while simultaneously handing me a list of chores she'd saved for my arrival. I had news, big news. After 9 months of relentless work, navigating a complex FDA audit that had terrified our executives, I hadn't just succeeded, I had excelled. I had been offered a significant promotion. It was a new position, a directorial role, overseeing the compliance integration for a new line of biomedical devices. It also meant a move. The position was in Denver, Colorado. I walked into the house that Saturday, the familiar weight of the grocery bags cutting into my hands, my heart hammering with a nervous excitement. I'd rehearsed it. I was going to tell them, and they were going to see me. "Hey, everyone," I called out over the sound of the TV and the kids screaming. "I have some really amazing news." My dad grunted. Lorraine waved vaguely from the living room, her phone pressed to her ear. Paige was, as usual, not there yet. I took a deep breath and started prepping the vegetables. Maybe at dinner. Dinner was the one time the TV volume was lowered from a 70 to a 40. I roasted a chicken. I made garlic mashed potatoes. I even baked an apple pie from scratch, the one they all claimed to love. I set the table. I corralled the children. Paige finally arrived, an hour late, looking flustered and important, and immediately started a live stream on her phone to her followers, panning over the food I had just made. We finally sat down. The kids were already dropping food on the floor. "So," I started, my voice overly bright, "I wanted to tell you all something. I got a big promotion at work." Lorraine was cutting one of her step-grandson's food into microscopic pieces. "Oh, that's nice, dear. More rules to write." "It's a huge step up, actually," I pressed on, my palms starting to sweat. "It's a new division, and it means I'm moving to Colorado." I said the words. They hung in the air for a second, suspended over the table. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Greg asked me to pass the potatoes. Paige was texting under the table. I felt that familiar, hot sting behind my eyes. I cleared my throat, determined to get a reaction. Any reaction. "Did you hear me?" I said I'm moving to Colorado for a promotion. At that exact moment, Paige's phone made a loud cha-ching sound. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. "Oh my God," she shrieked, dropping her fork. "Oh my God, I did it. I hit 10,000 in sales on that live stream." The table exploded. It was instantaneous. Greg's face lit up. "Paige, that's incredible." He muted the TV remote. Lorraine shot up from her chair, rushing to hug her. "My brilliant girl, I knew you could do it. We have to celebrate." Someone produced a bottle of sparkling wine, the cheap, sweet kind I knew they kept for Paige's wins. Glasses were clinked, toasts were made. Paige was crying tears of joy, recounting her triumph, how she upsold the last-ditch inventory. I just sat there, my promotion, my move, my entire life change had evaporated. It was less than nothing. It was an inconvenience, an interruption to the main event. The meal wound down. The celebration subsided into the usual chaos. And then, the final, perfect humiliation. Lorraine, beaming at her daughter, turned to me. She didn't even look at me, really. Her eyes were on the floor under her grandson's high chair, where a graveyard of chicken nuggets, mashed potatoes, and stray peas had accumulated. "Lucy, honey, be a doll and get that, will you?" she said, gesturing to the mess. The kids made such a mess for Aunt Lucy. My hands were shaking. I wasn't Aunt Lucy. I wasn't even Lucy. I was a function. I was the person who cleaned up the mess. I picked up the plate. I went to the kitchen, my back to them, and my hand trembled so hard I almost dropped the stack. I could hear them laughing, reliving Paige's glorious sale. I felt a single, hot tear slide down my cheek and land on a half-eaten piece of chicken. I didn't say another word. I cleaned the kitchen. I packed the leftovers into containers for them. I said goodnight to the back of my father's head. I got in my car, drove the 30 minutes home in complete, deafening silence, and walked into my immaculate, quiet apartment. And for the first time, I didn't feel relief. I felt rage. It was a cold, clean feeling. I picked up my phone. I opened the family group chat. The last message was from Lorraine, a blurry photo of the kids. I typed, "I'm moving on the 15th. I hit send. I watched. 1 blue check, 2, 3. All 3 of them, Greg, Lorraine, and Paige had seen it. The silence from my phone was louder than the TV at their house. I waited. 1 minute, 5, 30, nothing. My phone pinged an hour later. My heart did a stupid, hopeful leap. It was the group chat. A new message from Lorraine. It was a picture. It was the apple pie I had baked. A slice taken out of it. The caption, "Celebrating Paige's huge success. So proud of my girl." And then the emojis started. A flood of them from Paige and a thumbs up from my father. They were congratulating each other, using my labor as the centerpiece for a celebration that had completely erased me. That was the moment the lever switched. The quiet crying I'd been holding back didn't come. Instead, I just felt cold. I opened my laptop. I bypassed the real estate sites. I typed temporary furnished rentals Denver. I found a sterile-looking corporate apartment in a high-rise. I put down the deposit. I took a breath. It felt jagged, like my lungs weren't used to the oxygen. It was the breath of a person starting over, of someone who had to learn how to breathe without the weight of other people's expectations on their chest. The next 2 weeks were a blur of logistics. I gave notice at my apartment. I filed the transfer paperwork at work. I hired movers. I sold my couch. I packed my life into cardboard boxes. And from my family. Not one call, not one text, not congratulations, not "Why are you leaving?" Not "Will you be safe?" Silence. The day of the move arrived. It was the 15th. The massive truck was parked outside, the ramp down. The movers, 2 men who spoke quietly, were wrapping my few pieces of remaining furniture. I was doing a final sweep when my phone rang. It was Lorraine. A jolt of something. It wasn't hope. It was just reflex. I answered. Lucy, thank God. Listen, I'm in a terrible bind. She started. No hello. Paige has a last-minute pop-up at the mall, and I'm supposed to help her. But the boys are just acting up terribly. I need you to swing by and get them, just for this Saturday. I stood in my empty living room. The echo of her voice hung in the air. She hadn't heard me. She hadn't read the text. Or worse, she had. And she just didn't care. It was Saturday. My function was required. Lorraine, I said, and my voice was strange. It was calm. It was flat. I can't. A pause. What do you mean? You can't. It's Saturday. The boys love when you... I'm leaving right now, I said. The moving truck is here. I am leaving Michigan. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. That was all. Just that one surprised, offended sound, and then a cold, hard click. She hung up on me. I put the phone in my pocket. One of the movers waved to me. That's the last box, ma'am. Thank you, I said. I locked the door to my empty apartment. I got into my car. I followed the moving truck onto the highway, pointing west. Hours later, somewhere in Illinois. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I glanced down. A text from my father. What do you mean? You're leaving. I looked at the message. I looked at the long, open road in front of me. I picked up the phone. I muted the entire family thread, and I set the phone back down. I did not answer. I drove for 2 days. I arrived in Denver. The temporary apartment was exactly as sterile as the pictures. Beige walls, industrial carpet, a view of a parking garage. I sat on the floor, the keys in my hand. It was the first time I had been truly alone in my entire adult life. I whispered it, just to hear the sound. Here, I am just Lucy. I didn't need to finish the thought. I wasn't the cook. I wasn't the babysitter. I wasn't the analyst with the boring job. I wasn't the default. The next Monday, I walked into the Northwind Therapeutics Denver campus. It was all glass and steel, nestled against the mountains. My new boss, a man named Dane, shook my hand. Lucy White, welcome to the team. We're glad to have you. He smiled. He didn't ask me to get him coffee. He didn't ask me to watch his kids. He pointed me to my office, a real office with a door, and said, Let's get you started. No one here knew me as the shadow in my family's house. No one here had any expectations of me, except that I'd be good at my job. It was a beginning. The Denver office was different. It smelled like industrial-strength coffee and quiet ambition. In Michigan, the office was a sea of gray cubicles. Here, glass walls looked out onto the Rockies, a constant, massive reminder of perspective. My new boss, Dane, didn't ease me in. He handed me a digital file that was already infamous in the department. This one's been stuck for 9 months, he said, tapping the monitor. It's a validation protocol for a new bio-interface. Clinical says it's ready. Legal says the risk profile is terrifying. And supply chain won't source the components until both sign off. It's a stalemate. 9 months. In the pharmaceutical world, that's a lifetime of lost revenue and, more importantly, a compliance nightmare just waiting for an audit. Back in Michigan, I would have been too exhausted by Saturday to even process this. I would have been thinking about what ingredients I needed for Lorraine. Here, I just saw the puzzle. I spent the first week doing nothing but listening. I took the heads of clinical, legal, and supply chain to lunch separately. I didn't ask them what was wrong with the project. I asked them what their biggest bottleneck was in general. They weren't talking to each other. They were emailing past each other, copying VPs to cover themselves. Clinical was using acronyms legal didn't understand. Legal was sending back 30-page red lines that supply chain couldn't interpret. So I built the matrix. I lived in spreadsheets and regulatory databases for 72 hours. I created a centralized dashboard. It translated the clinical trial data into clear risk exposure levels for legal. Using a simple red-yellow-green system, it translated legal's requirements into actionable procurement standards for supply chain. It was a Rosetta Stone for 3 departments that had forgotten how to speak the same language. When I presented it, there was silence. The head of legal, A stern woman named Maria just stared at the screen. You connected the FDA CFR references directly to the supply chain SOPs and to the informed consent language in the clinical trial. I said, if we change one, the matrix flags the other two for mandatory review. They can't be out of sync again. Dane approved it. The 9-month logjam broke in a single afternoon. My old self would have been drained by this, but the new Lucy, the Denver Lucy, was energized. I realized how much energy I'd been wasting trying to manage emotions that weren't mine. That energy had to go somewhere. I enrolled in a night course for an advanced GXP auditing certification. Good manufacturing practices, the Bible of our industry. It was dense, technical, and I loved it. In the mornings, I started running. The air in Michigan was flat and damp. The air in Denver was thin and sharp. I'd drive to Washington Park as the sun was coming up. The air so cold it hurt my teeth. At first, I could barely manage a mile without my lungs screaming for oxygen they couldn't get at this altitude. But I kept going. I was building new lungs. Just as I was building a new life, I was also building a new muscle, the word no. It was harder than the running. It felt unnatural, like trying to write with my left hand. A colleague in the marketing department, a nice guy named Ben, stopped by my desk. Hey, Lucy, you're a whiz with data. Right, I'm trying to pull some numbers for a presentation, and the system is just, could you just take a quick look? I felt the old instinct rise, the default, be helpful, be the doll, just fix it for him. It would take me 20 minutes. My heart hammered. I'm afraid I can't, Ben, I said. My voice was tight. My plate is full with the new compliance rollout. He just blinked. Oh, okay, no problem. I'll check with the T. He walked away. The world didn't end. He wasn't angry. He just went to the right department. It was a revelation. I had spent 29 years believing that no was an act of aggression. Here, I was learning it was just a statement of fact. It was a boundary. My first performance review with Dane was short. He pulled up my metrics. You're not a compliance analyst. White, he said, not unkindly. You're a puzzle solver. You suppress risk like you're defusing a bomb. The salary increase in your new offer reflects that. It was a significant raise. I looked at the number, and for the first time, I didn't immediately calculate how much of it could be siphoned off by a family emergency. I realized the truth. Sitting in that glass office, I wasn't just good at my job when I was focused. I was brilliant. All the mental energy I had spent anticipating Lorraine's moods, managing Paige's dramas, and trying to get my father's attention. It was a massive, wasted resource. When I wasn't being forced to be generous with my time and energy, I was smarter. I was faster. I was deeper in my work. The real test came with the changing seasons. The first text I ignored was a Happy Thanksgiving in the muted family group chat. I let it sit, unread, until the notification badge disappeared into my phone's history. Then came Christmas. My phone was silent. My birthday in January. Silence. I hadn't blocked them. I had just muted them. But at some point, I realized the silence was total. They hadn't reached out. After my father's one angry text on the highway, there was nothing. No emails from Lorraine asking where her Saturday service went. No calls from Paige needing money. The silence I had dreaded my whole life turned out to be the greatest gift I'd ever received. It was freedom. My Sundays changed. In Michigan. Sunday evening was a pit of anxiety in my stomach. It was the time I'd spend making a massive grocery list for their house, prepping for the next Saturday, bracing myself for the obligation. Now, Sunday evenings were mine. I'd pour a glass of wine. I'd meal prep my lunches for the week healthy. Simple food I actually liked. I'd review my work calendar, my GXP study schedule, and my running log. I was planning my life, not my servitude. After exactly 1 year in Denver, I walked out of the sterile corporate apartment. I had saved my raises, my bonuses, and the money I was no longer spending on groceries for 5 people. I bought a 2-bedroom condominium in Cherry Creek. It was an upscale neighborhood, quiet, with tree-lined streets and boutiques I could actually afford to window shop at. I put 40% down, a solid, heavy number, It was my armor. The first night in my new, empty condo. I didn't own a couch. I sat on the hardwood floor, eating takeout from a box, and I felt a sense of ownership so profound it was almost physical. 2 weeks later, I went to a shelter and adopted a dog. She was a retriever mix, all legs and golden fur, with eyes that were deep and trusting. They had named her Nova. It felt right. She was a new star. She was warmth, but a warmth that asked for nothing but consistency. She didn't need me to fix her business. She just needed me to be there. Her presence was unconditional. The promotions kept coming. My work on the biomedical matrix got attention from the acquisitions team. When Northwind bought a smaller company specializing in robotic rehabilitation devices, I was tapped to lead the entire compliance integration. I was now a lead. My salary took another jump. I took myself out to dinner to celebrate. A real, expensive steakhouse. I sat at the bar, alone, with a glass of $9 Cabernet. I looked around. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I wasn't lonely. I realized the dull, constant ache of sadness I used to carry in my chest hadn't just disappeared. It had been replaced. It had calcified into something solid. It was stability. It was self-worth. I bought a large whiteboard for my new kitchen. I only wrote one thing on it. I do not owe anyone the things they can do for themselves. It was my new constitution. The emails from Lorraine never came. The calls from Greg never came. The silence from Michigan was absolute. I opened a new, private investment fund, a just-in-case account that was now a what's next account. I made a new note in my phone, a private one. The title was Dream House. Underneath, I wrote, glass walls, a view of the mountains, absolute privacy. It was no longer a fantasy. It was a 5-year plan. In the 2 years I had been in Denver, my contact with the extended family had been zero, but there was one exception, my Aunt Marla. Marla was my father's younger sister. She was different. She was the one who, at family Christmases past, would find me in the kitchen and ask, "How's your job really going, Lucy?" and then actually listen to the answer. She was the one who had sent me a text a week after I left Michigan that just said, "I hope you're okay. Call me if you're not." We'd had a quiet, 20-minute conversation where I didn't tell her everything, but I told her enough. She understood. So when she emailed me saying she had a layover in Denver that had been extended by a full day, I was genuinely happy to see her. I picked her up from the airport. She hugged me, a real hug, and held me at arm's length. "My God, Lucy," she said, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "The mountain air suits you. You look solid." Solid. It was the perfect word. I drove her back to my condo. She walked in and just stopped, her suitcase handle still in her hand. Nova came trotting over, tail wagging, and nudged Marla's hand. Marla knelt to pet her, her eyes scanning the room. My condo wasn't huge, but it was bright. I had floor-to-ceiling windows. I had filled it with plants that were thriving. The furniture was minimal, but good, a deep blue velvet couch, a real wooden dining table instead of a particle board placeholder. It was clean. It was calm. "Lucy," she breathed, looking around as Nova licked her chin. This is beautiful. It's so peaceful." "It's my sanctuary," I said, and I meant it. We spent the afternoon catching up. I made tea. We sat on the balcony. I told her about my promotions, about the GXP certification, about the running. I didn't tell her about the investment account or the dream house note. I just told her I was happy. "I can see that," she said, smiling. "You were always the one holding everyone else up. It's good to see you've built something just for you." As she was getting ready to leave for her rescheduled flight, she hesitated by the door. "You know, this is silly, but would you mind if I took a picture? Just of the living room my friend back home is redecorating, and this is exactly her style." I should have said no. The thought flashed in my mind, a quick, sharp warning. No, this is mine. This is private. But it was Marla. It was innocent. She wasn't Paige. Trying to monetize my life. She was just proud. Of course, I said. Go ahead. She pulled out her phone, stood by the doorway, and snapped one picture. It framed the clean lines of the couch, the thriving fiddle-leaf fig in the corner, and the view of the Cherry Creek trees out the window. Thanks, hun, she said, slipping her phone into her purse. I'm so proud of you. Don't be a stranger. I took her to the airport, hugged her goodbye, and drove home. I fed Nova. I reviewed a compliance brief for the next day. I felt good. The feeling lasted until 10 o'clock that night. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a notification from a social media platform I rarely checked. Marla had tagged me in a post. My blood went cold. I opened the app. There it was. My living room. The photo she'd taken. The caption was simple, heartfelt, and utterly devastating in its implications. So wonderful to see my niece, Lucy White, thriving in Denver. Her apartment is just gorgeous. So proud of you. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was public, and the comments had already begun. They were from cousins I hadn't spoken to in a decade. Wow, what neighborhood is that? Gorgeous. That couch looks expensive. Is that Cherry Creek? What's a place like that go for? Good for Lucy. Did she get a new boyfriend? I felt the walls of my sanctuary start to crack. They were looking in. They were pricing my furniture. They were assessing my life as if it were an asset sheet. And then I saw the comment that made me feel physically ill. It was from Lorraine. Our family is so proud of our Lucy. She's always been such a smart, hard-working girl. We miss her terribly. Our Lucy. I threw the phone onto the bed like it was on fire. I started pacing, Nova watching me with worried eyes. Our Lucy. The possessiveness, the lie, the absolute, galling hypocrisy. We miss her terribly. 2 years of absolute, deafening silence. And now, a public claim of pride in front of the entire extended family. I was breathing too fast. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to get the compliance analyst part of my brain to take over. Assess the risk. What was the exposure? The exposure was this: Lorraine now knew I was not living in a gutter. I was thriving. And to her, thriving meant has resources. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text message. From Marla. Oh, Lucy. Honey, I'm so sorry. I think I made a terrible mistake. Attached was a screenshot. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely read it. It was the family group chat, the one I still had muted. My name was at the top. Paige. Did you guys see Marla's post? Lucy's place looks expensive. Like, really expensive. I bet her boyfriend bought it. Marla said in a comment he was in tech or something. I hadn't even told Marla I was dating anyone. Lorraine. She always was secretive. Thriving is right. Paige. You're right. That place looks like it's worth a lot. Paige. Someone should find out. With my new supplier costs. I mean, she's family. We should ask her about her finances. Lorraine. That's a very good idea. Honey, she's been gone long enough. It's time she reconnected. I'll reach out. The screenshot ended there. I stared at the words. Should ask her about her finances. I'll reach out. They were coming. They were coming for the money they assumed I had. My success wasn't a cause for their celebration. It was a resource they hadn't known they could tap. I didn't have to wait long. My phone pinged again. A new text. From a number I hadn't seen in 2 years, but still had saved under stepmother. Lucy, honey, it's been too long. Your father and I miss you so much. We were just looking at the calendar, and this weekend is finally free. We'd love to fly out and see you and this beautiful new life you've built. We are so proud. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My throat was too tight. I was back in that kitchen, my hands shaking as I cleaned up mashed potatoes from the floor. I stared at the message, my heart pounding a sick, heavy rhythm. This weekend. My phone pinged again before I had even processed the first message. A second text from Lorraine. Just went ahead and bought the tickets. Flights to Denver were on sale. We land tomorrow at noon, And we have a wonderful surprise. Paige is coming too. And she's bringing the boys. It'll be just like old times. We can all have a big family dinner on Saturday. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow at noon. It wasn't a request. It was an announcement. An invasion. They had invited themselves. They had invited Paige. They had invited the two children who had been trained to see my home as a playground and me as a servant. It'll be just like old times. That line was a threat. It was a promise that they intended to erase the last 2 years, to walk back into my life and reset the dynamic to their default. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen and gripped the edge of my quartz countertop. The stone was cold and solid under my palms. I felt that old familiar panic, the urge to accommodate, to buy groceries, No. I grabbed my phone. My first instinct was to call in sick, to leave, to book a hotel. Instead, I dialed a number. "Hey, Knox," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Evan Knox. I'd met him 6 months ago at the dog park. Nova had tried to steal his dog's ball, and we'd started talking. He was quiet, intense, and smart. He owned a startup that was developing, of all things, the exact kind of robotic rehabilitation devices I was now overseeing the compliance for. Our worlds, professionally, were about to collide. Personally, it was new. It was easy. He didn't demand anything from me. He just seemed to enjoy my company. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, White, you sound organized. What's wrong?" He knew my tells. "My family is coming," I said, the words tasting like ash. "The ones I told you about. They're landing tomorrow at noon. They invited themselves." There was a pause, not an, "Oh, that's nice" pause, a real pause. "The default family," he said, using the term I'd used to describe them once. "Yes." "This isn't a visit, is it? It's an ambush." "Yes." "Okay," he said. He sounded calm. "I can be there. I can be there when they arrive. I'll take off work. We can be a united front." He paused. "You do not have to face this alone, Lucy, unless you want to." I closed my eyes. The offer was so clean. A united front. Me and him. But a small, cold voice in my head, the compliance analyst, spoke up. This wasn't his audit. It was mine. They weren't coming because of him. They were coming for me. If I let him fight this for me, the dynamic wouldn't be broken. It would just be transferred. "Thank you, Evan," I said, and I meant it. "But this is something I have to do myself. This is my audit. I have to be the one to close it." "All right," he said, and I heard the support in his voice, even in his acceptance. "But you're not alone. Even if you do it yourself, call me the second you need me, or the second you're done. My phone's on." "I will," I said. "I have to go. I have to prepare. Good luck, Lucy." I hung up, and I began to prepare. But this time, I wasn't buying groceries. I was preparing a defense. I went through the condo. I took the glass-blown vase Evan had bought me and put it in my closet. I locked my bedroom door. I took my work laptop and my personal financial statements and locked them in my home safe. I moved anything breakable, anything valuable, anything personal, into the spare bedroom and locked that door. 2. I was stripping the condo of all its personality, all its warmth. I was turning my sanctuary into a sterile meeting room. Then I went to my home office. I opened my file cabinet. I pulled out a simple, manila folder. I'd started it, half-jokingly, a year ago. After a particularly bad memory had surfaced, I took a label maker and printed a new label. I stuck it on the front. Instances of default. Inside, I had just a few documents, a printout of my bank statements from those last few months in Michigan, with the grocery bills for their house highlighted. A screenshot of the text message I had sent, "I'm moving on the 15th, and the subsequent silent read receipts from all 3 of them. A screenshot of Lorraine's celebratory pie picture. It wasn't much. It was just the truth. I placed the folder on the coffee table, right in the middle. Finally, I went to my front door. I checked the settings on my smart doorbell. The camera was active. I went into the app and turned on the mandatory record function for all motion and sound. It would capture everything that happened on my doorstep and in the hallway. I was done. I looked around the living room. It was clean, impersonal, ready. A light snow had begun to fall outside, the flakes drifting down in the halos of the streetlights. It was quiet, the calm before the storm. A family-shaped hurricane was currently over the Midwest, and it was heading straight for me. Nova padded over and put her head on my knee. I ran my hand over her soft fur, her presence a solid, warm anchor in my suddenly cold apartment. "It's okay, girl," I whispered, to her or to myself. I wasn't sure. "They're just auditors, and they're not going to like what they find." I looked at the door. "Tomorrow," I said, my voice quiet in the empty room. "Tomorrow, we use the truth. Noon." Exactly on time. The buzz from the intercom was harsh, a sound that didn't belong in my quiet building. I pressed the button. "Yes, it's us." Lorraine's voice, filtered through the speaker, was painfully bright, a high-pitched performance of joy. I buzzed them in. I looked at Nova, who was standing by my legs, her fur slightly raised. "It's okay," I said, my voice low. "Stay." I went to the door, opened it, and waited in the doorway. I heard them before I saw them, the thud of the kids' footsteps running down the hall, the high-pitched shriek. "Which one is it?" Then they rounded the corner. Lorraine was in the lead, beaming, her arms already wide. Paige was behind her, phone already in hand, filming her journey. My father, Greg, was last, holding a white paper bag from a bakery. "Lucy!" Lorraine surged forward and wrapped me in a hug so tight it was suffocating. It wasn't a hug of affection, it was a hug of possession, of restaking a claim. She smelled like hairspray and the faint, stale scent of airplane air. "Oh, honey, you look thin." "Hello, Lorraine." "Hello, Dad?" "Paige." I was polite. I was a stranger. "Lucy," my father said, fumbling with the bag. He pushed it at me. "I brought you those almond things you like." I looked at the bag. It was from a chain bakery. Inside were bear claws, sticky with glaze. I had never, in my life, liked bear claws. I was allergic to almonds. "Thank you, Dad," I said, taking the bag. "Come in." I stepped back, and it was like a dam broke. The two boys, now older, louder, and seemingly wilder, shot past me into the condo. "Whoa! Look at this place," one yelled. "Is there a pool?" the other demanded. They were not guests. They were a search party. "Don't touch that," the older one yelled, lunging for something on my bookshelf. "Don't touch anything," I said. My voice cut through the air, sharper than I intended, but effective. They both froze, looking at me with wide, surprised eyes. They weren't used to me having a voice. Lorraine clucked. "Oh, boys will be boys. Don't be so stern. Lucy, they're just excited." She, however, was not excited. Her eyes were doing a rapid, cold calculation. She was scanning the furniture, the windows, the art on the walls. Her smile tightened. "You certainly have done well. It's all a little wasteful, isn't it? So much space for just one person." "I like the space," I said. My father, looking lost, gravitated to the one familiar thing in the room. He saw my television, grabbed the remote, and turned it on. A football game blared to life, filling my silent sanctuary with the roar of a crowd. He sat on my blue velvet couch as if he owned it, his eyes already locked on the screen. He was home. Paige, meanwhile, had her phone held high. She was walking through my living room, narrating. "Hey guys, so we are here at my little sister's insane new place in Denver. Seriously, you guys, wow. She's doing so well." She spun the camera to her own face, her expression a practiced blend of pride and manufactured humility. Just goes to show what a supportive family can do. I felt the blood drain from my face. She was monetizing me. She was using my home, my sanctuary, as a backdrop for her next live stream, spinning a narrative of a supportive family that was a grotesque lie. That was it. The audit was beginning. I walked over to the television. I picked up the remote from the coffee table, aimed it, and pressed the power button. The roar of the crowd vanished, plunging the room into an abrupt, heavy silence. My father's head snapped up, his expression one of pure, bewildered offense. "Lucy, I was watching that." "We're not watching television, Dad," I said, my voice perfectly level. Then I turned to Paige. I walked directly to her, held out my hand. She flinched, still holding her phone. "What?" she said, laughing nervously. I didn't say a word. I just waited, my hand out. Her eyes darted to Lorraine, who was watching me with a new, narrow-eyed intensity, slowly, like I was disarming her. Paige lowered the phone. I took it from her hand. I pressed the side button, ending the live stream, and placed it, screen down, on the coffee table. "Hey," she yelped. I was in the middle of... "No, you weren't," I said. "You're done." I looked at all three of them. Greg, frozen on the couch. Lorraine, standing stiffly by the door. Paige, now vibrating with anger. I pointed to the couch. "Sit down." It was a command. It was the voice I used with the legal department. They sat, all three of them, bunched together on my couch. Even the kids, sensing the sudden, dangerous shift in the atmosphere, had gone quiet and were hovering by the kitchen. I remained standing. I was in my territory. Paige recovered first. She crossed her arms, her leg already bouncing. She looked around, her eyes landing on the one thing I had forgotten to hide, a small, abstract glass sculpture Evan had given me. "Wow," she scoffed. "Someone's got money to burn. What did this cost? What's your mortgage on this place? Anyway, how much did you put down 40%? What's your interest rate? I bet your boyfriend co-signed." The questions were rapid fire, crude, and invasive. She wasn't asking to make conversation. She was performing an appraisal. I let the silence sit for a moment after her last question. "Why are you really here?" I asked. The air went taut. The fake smiles, the forced enthusiasm. It all evaporated. This was it. Lorraine, the seasoned director of this drama, took a breath. She reached over and patted Greg's hand, a signal for him to play his part. He just continued to stare at me, looking like a lost old man. Lorraine's face crumpled into a mask of practiced maternal concern. "Lucy, honey," she began, her voice dropping into a low, serious register. "We are here because we're a family, and families help each other. We are so proud of all this." She waved her hand around the room, a gesture that was meant to be admiring but came off as dismissive. "But we're in trouble." I said nothing. I just waited. "It's Paige," she continued, looking at her daughter with a show of heartbreaking sympathy. "Her boutique. You know how hard she's worked. She finally took the leap. A real brick-and-mortar store at the new outlet mall. She put everything into it. And it didn't work out," Paige muttered, staring at the floor. "The landlord was a shark. The foot traffic was all wrong. It's not my fault." "No, honey, it's not," Lorraine said, squeezing her hand. "The point is, Lucy, she's in debt. She signed a personal guarantee on the lease. And, well, how much?" I asked. My voice was flat. Lorraine glanced at Greg, who finally spoke. $42,000, he mumbled, not looking at me. "They're going to garnish her wages, ruin her." $42,000, a number, a specific, ugly number. This was the reason, not pride, not because they missed me. They were here with an invoice. "Your father and I," Lorraine said, her voice catching, We've used our retirement. We've helped as much as we can. We've burned through it." I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was looking at his hands. He had let her. He had let her burn through their future to prop up Paige's failing, amateurish business. And so, Lorraine said, leaning forward, her eyes bright and desperate, we were thinking, you have this beautiful place. You've done so well. You could sell this. You could sell this condo. We could all get a fresh start. You could help your sister. Help the family get back on its feet. It's just stuff. Lucy. Bricks and mortar. This is about family. I stared at her. Sell my condo. Sell my sanctuary. Sell the physical proof of my escape. Sell the 40% down I had earned. The stability I had built. The life I had made. All to pay for Paige's bad business decisions. The sheer, monstrous audacity of it took my breath away. I must have been silent for too long, because Lorraine's eyes darted around, looking for a new angle. Her gaze landed on the locked bedroom door, then back at me. Or, she said, dropping her voice even lower, as if sharing a clever secret strategy. Your boyfriend, the tech guy, he has money, doesn't he? Startups like that? They're loaded. Maybe he could just help. Alone? For family. That was the moment the last, tiny, flickering ember of something for them died. It wasn't just my resources she was after. It was his. It was anyone's. I was just a conduit to a resource. I turned from her. I walked over to my desk, picked up the remote for the small projector I used for work presentations, and aimed it at the blank, white wall opposite the couch. I pressed the power button. The machine whirred to life, and a bright, white square illuminated the wall. Paige scoffed. What is this? Are you going to show us a PowerPoint? Yes, I said. I am. I clicked the button. The first slide appeared. It was simple. Just black text on a white background. 2 years. I turned to look at them. They were staring at the wall, confused. 2 years? I said. 2 years, 3 months, and 12 days. That's how long it's been since I left Michigan. That's how long it has been since I have received a single phone call or text message from anyone on this couch that wasn't a public-facing lie or a demand. I clicked again, a screenshot of my text. I'm moving on the 15th, underneath it, the read receipts from Greg, Lorraine, and Paige. And then, Lorraine's next message, the picture of the apple pie. Celebrating Paige. Oh, come on, Lorraine said, waving her hand. We were busy. You were just being dramatic. Was I? I clicked again. A new slide. The title, Instances of Default. What? What is that? Greg asked, finally sounding scared. It's a compliance term, I said. It's a record of failures. My failures. For 29 years. I failed to set a boundary. And these are the results. I clicked. Number 1, January 2018. I used my entire week of paid vacation time, the only one I had that year, to watch the boys, for free. So Paige could go to a business retreat in Miami. I never received a thank you. I clicked. Number 2, August 2018. I spent 3 consecutive nights, after my full-time job, packing and shipping over 500 orders for Paige's boutique, because she was too overwhelmed. My pay was leftover pizza. I clicked. Number 3, Thanksgiving, 2017. I did the shopping, the prep, and cooked a full dinner for 20. Lorraine told the guests she had handled everything, then asked why I wasn't helping with the cleanup. I scrolled. Number 4, number 5, number 10, number 20. The tally kept growing. Babysitting, cooking, cleaning, driving, loans that never came back, every single Saturday. Stop it, Lorraine whispered, color draining from her face. You're here, I said, my voice unsteady but not with sorrow, steady with a precise, cooled fury. After 2 years without a word, not to see me, not to ask if I'm okay. You're here to ask me to cash out my life's work, my safety net to cover a $42,000 crisis you caused and encouraged. Lorraine's eyes filled with real tears, the kind she saved for the final move. "So that's it," she cried. "The performance beginning." Her voice climbing. "After everything we did for you. You're just distant. You've changed. Lucy, you're choosing money. You're choosing things. Over your family." It was the old, poisoned question, the one that had worked every single time. I looked at her. I looked at my father, who was staring at the blank screen, a broken man. I looked at Paige, who just looked angry. I turned off the projector. "No," I said. I walked to my front door. I pulled it open, letting the cold hallway air rush in. "I choose me. I choose self-respect." They stared at me, stunned. "The visit," I said, holding the door open, "is over." They just stood there. The silence in the room was absolute, heavy, and stunned. My command, "The visit is over," was a language they didn't understand. It was a word that had never been in my vocabulary, and they couldn't process it. Lorraine's manufactured tears had dried, leaving her face a mask of shocked, white-hot indignation. Paige looked like she'd been slapped. My father was the one who broke the spell. He was, and always had been, the family's chief negotiator, the peacemaker, which meant he was the one who decided how much of my resources were required to keep everyone else happy. "Lucy," he said, and his voice was a weak, placating rasp. He stood up slowly, not looking at me, but at the open door, as if the cold draft was the real enemy. "Now, hold on. Let's not be hasty. You made your point. You're upset. We understand that." "I am not upset, Dad," I said, and my voice was so calm it surprised me. "I am clear." "Okay, clear. Fine," he said, waving his hand, trying to smooth over the chasm I had just opened. "And maybe we deserved some of that. But selling the condo, Lorraine, that was too much." He shot his wife a weak, frustrated look. "But Lucy, family is family. What if we compromise?" I waited. "What if you just help Paige with half," he offered, as if it were a brilliant solution. "Just $21,000. That's not so much for you. Now, is it? Look at this place. Just half. That's reasonable. For your sister." I looked at him, the man who was supposed to protect me, still standing there, bargaining for my sacrifice. He wasn't stopping the attack. He was just negotiating a smaller wound. "No," I said. His face fell. No. The negotiation is over. The default settings are gone. As of this moment, there are new rules." I looked at all three of them, a tribunal of dysfunction. And I am going to be very clear about them, because I am a compliance analyst, and I believe in clear documentation of new protocols. Paige scoffed, but she looked nervous. "Rule number 1, I said, holding up a finger. "I am not a bank. I am not an ATM. I am not your financial safety net. You will not borrow money from me. You will not ask me for money, and you will not imply that I should help with money, ever. The answer, from now until the end of time, is no." "Rule number 2, I continued. "This is my home. This is my sanctuary. It is not a free hotel. It is not a community center. You will not invite yourselves here. You will not show up unannounced. This visit, which you forced upon me, is over. You will not be staying here." "And rule number 3, I said, my voice dropping. "I am not a resource. I am not Aunt Lucy the babysitter. I am not Lucy the free labor. I am not Lucy the cook. You will not demand my time. You will not default to my energy. You will not ask me to pack your boxes, watch your children, or clean up your messes. The answer is no." For a second, there was only the sound of my own breathing. Then Paige exploded. She shot up from the couch, her face a mottled, ugly red. "You can't do that. You can't be serious. What is wrong with you? We're sisters. We're family. Sisters are supposed to help each other. The word sisters hung in the air, tasting like poison. Sisters, I asked, my voice genuinely curious. When, Paige, when did you ever act like one? When did you once call me just to ask how my life was? When did you say thank you for the dozens of weekends I gave up when, in 2 years of silence? Did you behave like a sister? Because from where I'm standing, sister is just the word you use when you want something. That is not fair, Lorraine shot back, finding her voice, a mother lion defending her only cub of value. She has 2 small children. She's been busy, I've been busy, we had our hands full. You don't know what it's like. I am busy too, Lorraine, I said, turning to her. I have a career I've built from nothing. I have a life I manage. Being busy is not a license to treat another human being as a disposable resource. It is not an excuse for 2 years of absolute, unforgiving silence. But if you don't help us, Paige's voice cracked, and she pivoted, her eyes darting around as she searched for a new weapon. She found it. If you don't help me, they're going to lose their house. Is that what you want? She was aiming for the final, killer blow. Is that what you want, Lucy? She yelled, her voice righteous. You want Dad and Lorraine to be homeless, because that's what's going to happen. They burned through their retirement to save me, and if you don't step in now, this is all on you. It was the ultimate guilt trip, a masterpiece of emotional blackmail. The old me would have shattered, but the new me was a compliance analyst. I dealt in facts, not emotional hypotheticals. No, Paige, it's on you. She stopped. What? I have a question. Who signed the commercial lease for the boutique? Well, I did, she stammered. And who signed the personal guarantee on that lease? Was it Dad? Was it Lorraine? No, I had to, but they co-signed the original loan. The lease. Paige. Who is legally responsible for the $42,000 in commercial debt? She stared at me, her mouth open. You are, I answered for her. This is not my failure. It is not their failure. It is your failure. You are 32 years old. You took a business risk, and it failed. It is time for you to own your own consequences. You're talking about this like it's just business, Lorraine wailed. This is family. This is feelings. You're right, I said. You're talking about feelings. You're talking about sisters and help and love. I, on the other hand, am a compliance analyst. I deal in data. I deal in facts. I deal in proof. I walked to the coffee table. I picked up the manila folder, the one with the clean printed label, instances of default. Paige and Lorraine just stared at it. You said you were busy, I said to Lorraine. I pulled out the first document. It was the screenshot from my phone, the text message. I'm moving on the 15th. I am currently, by the way, recording this entire conversation, I said, tapping the phone in my pocket. My doorbell camera has been active since you arrived. I believe in documentation, but this is from 2 years ago. I held up the screenshot so she could see it. Here is my text, and here are the read receipts. From your phone, Lorraine, and your phone, Dad, and your phone, Paige, all within 10 minutes of my sending it. You weren't too busy to read it. You were just too busy to care. Lorraine's face went white. She wasn't looking at an emotion. She was looking at a timestamp. And here, I said, pulling out the next screenshot, is the group chat. 1 hour later, the picture of the apple pie I baked, the pie I baked to celebrate my promotion, which you used as a prop to celebrate Paige's win on a live stream, the pie you ate while ignoring the fact that I was leaving the state forever. Lorraine actually recoiled. She had no defense against a screenshot. She had no way to manipulate a timestamp. She was, for the first time in her life, trapped by an undeniable fact. My father, Greg, hadn't moved. He was staring at the floor, at his hands, at the blank television screen. He looked up, and his eyes, for the first time, I saw the man I'd wanted him to be, buried deep, Deep under decades of passivity and cowardice, his eyes were filled with a profound, hollow shame. "Lucy," he whispered. His voice was cracked. I'm sorry." The words hung in the room, the first real apology I had ever received from him. "I'm so sorry. Lou," it landed, heavy and useless. "It's too late, Dad," I said, and my voice was soft, but not forgiving. "It's 2 years too late." "This is insane," Paige spat. She was done. She grabbed her purse from the floor and started shoving her kids' arms into their coats. You've gone crazy. You're cold. You're just cold. You're not the Lucy we knew." "You're right," I said. "I'm not—" "Come on, boys," she snapped, yanking her older son's arm. "We're leaving. Your aunt is not a nice person." The younger boy, now overtired and angry at being manhandled, pulled away from her in a final defiant act of chaos. He made a lunge for the one object I had forgotten to hide, the small glass sculpture Evan had given me. "Mine!" he shrieked, his hand closing around it. Before I could even take a step, Nova was on her feet. She didn't growl. She didn't snap. She just moved between me and the child and let out a single, deep, territorial bark, a boof that echoed in the room. The boy froze, his eyes wide with terror, and dropped the sculpture. It hit the carpet, unharmed. He burst into tears. "Get that dog!" Paige shrieked, genuinely hysterical. "It's vicious." "Nova, here," I said calmly. She immediately trotted to my side, her tail wagging. I knelt and petted her. "Good girl." I looked at the crying child. I didn't scold him. I didn't soothe Paige. I picked up a picture book I kept in the living room for guests. I walked over to the boy. "You can't touch that," I said, my voice kind but firm. "It's not yours. You can, however, sit here and read this book until your mother is ready to go." The boy, stunned by the calm, took the book and sat down. Paige stared at me, speechless. I had just handled her child's tantrum, her and my dog, in less than 10 seconds. Without raising my voice, I stood up. I walked back to the front door. I held it open. "Lorraine, Dad, Paige, it's time to go." This time, there was no argument. They filed out in a miserable, silent line. Lorraine, pale and rigid, her mask of maternal warmth gone, revealing the cold, hard ambition beneath. Paige, muttering under her breath, probably composing the story she would tell the world, with her as the victim. My father was the last. He paused in the doorway, his shoulders slumped. He looked old. "Lou?" he started. "Goodbye, Dad," I said, and I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it firmly, quietly, and I turned the deadbolt. The click was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. I listened. I heard their footsteps, shuffling, uncertain, in the hallway. I heard Lorraine's furious, sibilant whisper. I heard Paige's answering, sharp reply. I heard the distant ding of the elevator, and then silence. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for my entire life. My phone, on the coffee table, suddenly lit up the dark room. It buzzed, a frantic, angry sound. A call from stepmother. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again. A text from Paige. "You are a monster." It buzzed again. A call from Dad. It lit up, again and again and again. A desperate, electronic flurry of them trying to reestablish the connection I had just severed. I walked over. I picked up the phone. I went to my settings. I scrolled down and pressed the button. Focus mode. All notifications, all calls, all texts, silenced. The phone went dark. I stood in the center of my living room. Nova came and put her head on my knee, and I ran my hand over her soft fur. "It's okay, girl," I whispered. "We're safe." My hands were shaking, a fine tremor, the adrenaline finally leaving my system. I went to the kitchen. I filled the kettle, the sound of the water loud in the quiet condo. I made a cup of strong black tea. I sat at my dining table, the one they hadn't touched. I opened my laptop. Its clean, bright screen, a comfort. I opened a new document. Not for them. For me. I typed a new title, 24-month plan. I started a new budget. I started a new investment projection. I opened a new browser tab and typed, mountain property near Aspen. My phone lit up one last time. A single text had broken through the barrier. An emergency override. It was from Lorraine. I opened it. One sentence. I don't understand you anymore. I looked at the message. I looked at the new, blank document on my screen, full of potential. I found myself typing a reply. I didn't send it. I just looked at the words. That's okay. I'm just starting to understand myself. The 2 years that followed were not silent. They were quiet. It was the quiet of focused work, the quiet of snow falling on pines, the quiet of a life being built on a foundation of its own choosing. That silence was punctuated by success. I didn't just climb at Northwind. I built a new ladder. The rehab device integration was a flawless success. I identified 3 areas of high-risk regulatory exposure that the acquired company hadn't even seen, saving us millions in potential fines before we ever went to market. I was promoted. I was promoted again. I was now the regional compliance manager for the entire Mountain West division. My job was no longer just to solve puzzles. It was to design the system that prevented them. And there was Evan. He was the opposite of my family. He was a man who listened more than he spoke, who watched, who understood. His startup was succeeding. But more than that, he understood the architecture of risk. He understood what I was building, both professionally and personally. We didn't just date. We merged our plans. We used my dream house note as a blueprint. After a year, we didn't buy a house. We bought a problem. It was a steep, difficult parcel of land high on a hill near Aspen, land that other developers had deemed too complicated to build on. We bought it through an entity, my idea, born from years of corporate defense. We formed the Snowlight Trust. It was an irrevocable trust, a complex legal structure designed, from its inception, to be an impenetrable fortress. Our names were on the trust documents as beneficiaries, but the trust itself was the owner. Then, we built the house. It wasn't a house, it was a statement. We hired an architect who understood light and privacy. The result was a structure of glass, dark walnut, and charcoal gray slate. It didn't sit on the hill. It grew out of it. The entire back of the villa was a 2-story wall of reinforced glass, looking out over a valley that was carpeted in snow for 6 months of the year. We built it to be self-sufficient, a full solar grid, radiant floor heating that warmed the slate under our feet, a constant, gentle warmth, a 4-car garage built into the hillside, invisible from the road, and for me, a library. It was a 2-story room, all walnut, with a rolling ladder, filled with the books I'd never had time to read. The kitchen was my favorite part. It was open, merging with the massive living space, centered around an island of white quartz so large it felt like a public forum. I spent a month choosing the hardware. I settled on heavy, brushed brass handles, solid, something you could grip, something that wouldn't break. We moved in on a cold day in October. The first snows just beginning. The first thing I did was hang the art, but it wasn't art. It was a series of photographs in simple, black frames, lining the long, slate-floored hallway from the garage. They were photos I had taken on solo hikes. Me, a tiny figure, standing at the edge of a pine forest wet with rain, my own boot print in the first snow on a high-pass trail, the view from a summit I had climbed alone at dawn. It was a gallery of my own resilience. Evan, walking behind me as I hung the last one, put his hands on my shoulders. He looked at the photos, then at the massive glass wall at the end of the hall. "You know what this place is, don't you?" he said, his voice quiet. "It's a graduation certificate, from a lifetime of endurance." He was right. It was my thesis, my defense, the market. By the time we finished, valued the villa at just over $10 million. But that number was an illusion. It was an asset that couldn't be touched. The documents of the Snowlight Trust were a spiderweb of clauses. The property could not be leveraged for personal debt. It could not be sold without a Byzantine series of permissions. It was legally protected from any creditor, any lawsuit, and most importantly, any emotional shakedown. It was not my house in the way Lorraine or Paige understood ownership. They couldn't demand I sell it, because, in a legal sense, I couldn't. I kept the Cherry Creek condo. It was part of the new system. I hired a management company and leased it to a university medical fellow. It was its own, separate stream of revenue, an independent financial entity that paid for itself and padded my private investment fund. It was my first line of defense. The trust was the second. My career was the third. Then, I built the final firewall. With Evan's support, I sat down with my attorney, not a family lawyer, but the sharpest corporate litigator I could find. We designed my will. It was less a will and more a compliance document. Attached to it was a private trust and a letter of instruction. It stated, in cold legal terms, that if I were ever to be declared incapacitated, or if any transaction over a certain amount was initiated under duress, my assets were to be automatically frozen, all of them, instantly, duress. The lawyer and I agreed, would be defined by any attempt by my known family of origin, Greg, Lorraine, or Paige, to gain power of attorney or access to my funds. It was the ultimate dead man's switch. My professional life had taught me a hard lesson. The best way to survive an audit is to build a system so clean, so documented, that no one would ever dare to start one. Behind my new home office, with its own view of the valley, was a door. It looked like a simple closet. It was not. It was a climate-controlled, fireproof safe room. Inside were not jewels or cash. Inside were shelves. On the shelves were hard copies. The Snowlight Trust documents, my will, the lease for the condo, my Northwind contracts, my own GXP manuals. It was the story of my life, told in legal documents, and it was secure. A month after we moved in, I hosted our first dinner party. It was a small group: Dane, my boss, and his wife, my attorney, 3 friends I'd made from my running group. Evan and I cooked. We drank expensive wine. We laughed, the sound echoing in the high, walnut-beamed ceilings. There was no one in the room related to me by blood. It was the first family dinner I'd ever had that felt real. That night, after everyone left, I sat in the library, the fire going, Nova, now an old, gray-muzzled, happy dog, asleep at my feet. I opened my laptop. I started a new letter, one I would never send. Dear Dad, I wrote, I am sitting in a house I built. I built it with my work. I built it with my boundaries. I am safe. I am warm. I am happy. I write this to you because I want you to know this. But I also know that if I sent this, you would see it as an invitation, or worse, an asset. I hope, one day, you see me as something other than a walking wallet. I hope you see me as your daughter. I closed the laptop. The words were a small, sad memorial to a relationship I had wanted, but would never have. On my desk, there was only one photograph from my old life. It was a small, faded picture, its corners soft with age. It was me, at 8 years old, all skinny legs and missing front teeth, my arms wrapped around the neck of my first dog, a scruffy terrier named Barnaby. In the photo, I was smiling, a real, unguarded smile. I was a child who had not yet learned that love was conditional. I kept it as a reminder not of them, but of her, a reminder of the person I was before I became a function. Outside, the wind howled. A heavy snow was falling. Thick, white flakes obscuring the valley, pressing against the massive glass walls. It was a blizzard. But inside, the slate floors were warm under my feet. I pulled a blanket over my legs, sipped my tea, and listened to the sound of the fire. I was no longer cold. The new system held for 1 year, 4 months, and 28 days. Aunt Marla came to visit. She was one of the very few people who had an open invitation to the villa. She was, as always, respectful, quiet, and kind. She loved the house. She loved sitting and watching the snow fall over the valley. On her last night, we were in the kitchen, She was helping me clean up, and she stopped, looking at the way the setting sun was hitting the quartz island and the dark walnut cabinets. "Lucy," she said, "this is the most beautiful room I have ever been in. Would it be terribly tacky of me to take a picture just for myself? I'll never post it." And I trusted her. She was my one link. "Marla," I said, "you are family. Of course, you can—" She took one photo. A lovely artistic shot of the kitchen island, the setting sun, and the mountains in the background. I had forgotten that Marla, for all her kindness, was also part of an older generation, a generation that sometimes just forgets. A week later, a text buzzed on my phone, a link to her social media. She hadn't just posted it, she had posted it with a caption that was pure, innocent pride. "I can't believe my niece lives here. It's not a house, it's a piece of art. That's her kitchen. Folks, just the kitchen." I looked at it, and I didn't feel anger at Marla. I just felt a cold, hard sense of inevitability. I read the comments that were already blooming, a digital fungus. "Whoa. Marla, whose resort is that? Is that a house you're kidding? Wait, which niece, the one from Michigan? That's not a kitchen, that's a showroom." And then, buried in the replies, a single, new comment, from an account I'd never seen before. It had no text. It was just a blank profile picture, and the name, Lorraine White, and a like. She was watching, silently. I closed the app. I pulled up the internal security feed for the villa on my monitor. I went to the settings. I activated the audio recording for the main living area, the front gate, and the driveway. I checked the batteries on the child locks for the pool room. I sent a text to Evan, who was at his office in Boulder. Marla posted a picture. Lorraine saw it. His reply was immediate. "On my way. I'll work from the villa." He didn't need to. He just knew. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, at 9:02 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was an internal call, from the security gate at the bottom of our half-mile-long driveway. I picked it up. "Yes, Miguel." "Ms. White?" His voice was polite, professional. "I have a situation, a rental car, a Mr. Greg White, a Lorraine White, a Paige. I'm sorry." She's talking over him, and 2 children. They are being very insistent. They say they're your family and that you're expecting them." I looked out the glass wall, over the silent, snowy valley. They say they are family. I thought for exactly 5 seconds. I thought about the files. I thought about the locks. I thought about the cameras. "It's all right, Miguel," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "Let them in. They are expected." "Yes, ma'am. Opening the gate." I clicked off. I walked to the main monitor. I pulled up the feed from the driveway camera, the one that looked down the steep, switchback road. I turned to Evan, who was standing by the coffee machine, his mug in hand. "They're on their way up," I said. "And Evan, full audio, full video. We are in a compliance audit." He nodded, his face grim. "Got it." We watched on the screen. The little red rental sedan looked pathetic, straining up the icy, heated driveway. It was a 4-minute drive from the gate to the house, and as it got closer, I saw it. Paige. She was in the front passenger seat, and she had her phone. It was outside the window, aimed at the house as they approached. She was already live streaming. Evan just let out a low whistle. She's incredible. She's predictable," I said, "and that's her weakness." I went to the front door. It was 3-inch thick walnut, operated on a silent pivot. I didn't wait for them to knock. As the car crunched to a stop on the heated slate of the motor court, I pulled the door open. I just stood there. They tumbled out of the car. The kids were screaming. "A pool, Mom. You said there's a pool." Greg looked gray and sick, fumbling with another white paper bag. Paige was yelling into her phone. You guys, you will not believe this place. It is insane. my millionaire sister. You guys, we are here. And then there was Lorraine. She got out of the car. She looked up. She saw the sheer, cantilevered roof. She saw me, standing in the doorway. She walked, as if in a trance, into the great hall. She stopped. She was standing on the slate floor. She looked up at the 20-foot-high, vaulted walnut ceiling. She looked forward, through the 30-foot-wide, floor-to-ceiling glass wall, at the panoramic, jaw-dropping view of the snow-covered valley, and she froze. Her mouth opened. Her purse, the same old one, slipped from her fingers and hit the warm floor with a dull thud. She turned, her eyes wide and blank, and looked at me. Her voice was a dry, ragged whisper. Where did you get all this? It was the hook from my own life, playing back. I had waited 4 years to answer that question. I smiled, a small, polite, professional smile. I got it, I said. From all the Saturdays I wasn't cooking for you. I got it from all the nights I wasn't packing your daughter's boxes. I got it from the time I stopped giving to people who didn't deserve it. It adds up. Lucy, my father, Greg, broke the spell. He rushed forward, pushing the paper bag at me. I brought those things you like, the almond. Bear claws, I finished for him. Thank you, Dad. You're still wrong. I'm still allergic to almonds. Evan stepped forward, his hand out, a picture of polite, disarming calm. Mr. White, I'm Evan Knox. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. My father looked, bewildered, at Evan's hand, and shook it weakly. Evan was 6'2", solid, and exuded a kind of quiet, unshakable confidence that my father had never, in his entire life, possessed. A pool. The kids had spotted the door to the west wing. They made a screaming, frantic break for it. Boys, no, Paige yelled, still filming. The boys hit the handle. Nothing. They pulled. They slammed their small fists against it. The handle, a heavy brushed brass bar, didn't budge. It's locked. Mom, the older one shrieked. It's not locked. Honey, I called out, my voice bright. It's just child-proof. The magnetic system won't release for anyone under 4 feet tall. Safety compliance. You know, insurance. The boys stared at the door, defeated. Evan had designed the lock himself. Paige's attention, however, was already elsewhere. She was walking through the main room, her phone panning across the furniture, the minimal, Italian leather sofas, the massive, reclaimed wood coffee table. Oh my God, she was whispering to her phone. This couch. This is like a $10,000 couch. Lucy, what did this cost? We find, Evan said, his voice cutting cleanly through the air, that we're more interested in time than in price. Aren't we, Lucy? Absolutely, I said. Please, sit down, all of you. They looked at me. I was not asking. I was directing. They sat, a miserable, stunned huddle on a sofa that was worth more than their car. Greg looked like he was going to be sick. Paige had, for once, stopped filming and was just staring, her mind clearly trying to do the math. Lorraine finally found her voice. She had been through the shock. Now, she was recalibrating. She was finding her script. She took a deep, shuddering breath. She rearranged her face into the familiar mask of motherhood. She was no longer the shocked invader. She was the disappointed, loving matriarch. Lucy, she said, her voice shaking with manufactured emotion. We are so proud of you. It's a lot. It's wonderful. She was building up to it. I could see the pivot coming. But that's why we're here. We are a family, and we really need you. Honey, we really, truly need your help. The family is in a terrible place. I looked at her. I nodded. I didn't say, get out. I didn't say, no. I looked at Evan. He went to the library, and he returned with a simple, silver tray. On the tray were not drinks. There were not cookies. On the tray were 3, leather-bound, professionally presented folders. I know, I said. That's why I prepared this. I took the tray from Evan. I leaned forward, and I placed it on the massive coffee table. In front of them. The sound was quiet, solid. Paige, Greg, and Lorraine stared at the folders. On the cover of each one, in simple, embossed, gold lettering, were 5 words. Assistance proposal transparency required. Paige's eyes rolled so far back in her head, I thought she might faint. Oh my God, she groaned, her voice dripping with the exhaustion of someone who has never had to do a hard thing in her life. Are you serious? More paperwork? I looked her dead in the eye. This time, Paige, I said. We're not daydreaming. Paige just stared at the 3 identical, leather-bound folders on the coffee table. Her disgust was visceral. I'm not reading that. What are you, a psycho? I'm a compliance manager, I said, my voice perfectly neutral. I tapped the folder in front of her. And you are here to request assistance. This is the assistance proposal. You can open it, or you can leave. Your choice. Evan was standing by the fireplace, a silent, solid presence. He wasn't my boyfriend in that room. He was my legal counsel, my co-founder, my witness, Lorraine. Seeing Paige was about to explode, put her hand on her arm and put on her negotiator face. Honey, please, she said to me, her voice dripping with forced reason. We're not here to read. We're here to talk. Just tell us what to do. Fine, I said. I opened the center folder. This is a non-financial support package. Non-financial, Paige spat the words. As I said, I continued, ignoring her. A non-financial package. Page 1, I have compiled a list of 3 of the top retail operations consultants in Colorado. I am willing to pay, in one single, non-repeatable payment, for a 6-hour consultation with any of them. They will audit your failed business model and tell you why you are $42,000 in debt. My model wasn't. Page 2, I said, my voice overriding hers. A list of 5 certified bankruptcy accountants. I am willing to fund your initial meeting with one. They will, most likely, advise you to declare Chapter 7, which will clear your debt and ruin your credit, but it will be clear. Page 3. A list of online courses for commercial lease negotiation and small business finance. I am willing to pay the tuition for all of them. This is the proposal. A one-time, non-cash investment in your education, so that you never, ever, make this mistake again. The silence in the room was absolute. Paige just looked at me. You want me to go to school? I am offering you the tools to fix your own life, I said. This is a joke, Lorraine said, her voice rising. She doesn't need a class, Lucy. She needs money. We need money. Just for this one time. Ah, I said. I turned the page in my folder. You've brought me to the financial assistance clause. I looked Lorraine dead in the eye. You used the trigger phrase, just this once. I reached into the folder and pulled out a separate, slender document. This, I said, is the just this once ledger. It's an addendum. It's a list, Lorraine, of the 34 separate times between 2017 and 2019 that you or Paige asked me for money or services using that exact phrase. It's all here. The dates, the amounts, the unfulfilled promises of repayment. It totals, with interest and the cost of my unbilled labor, at a conservative estimate, at just over $38,000. Greg, who had been silent, finally choked out. 38, Lucy, that's not. So, I continued, you want to discuss a new financial transaction? Fine. But we are no longer operating on verbal agreements. This time, there is a compliance protocol. I turned the page. One you, Paige, will sign this document, which gives me full, unrestricted access to your complete financial records for the last 24 months, bank statements, credit card statements, all of your social media boutique transactions, all of it. You want to audit me? Paige shrieked. Of course, I said. I'm not giving a transfusion to a patient who is still actively bleeding. I need to see where every dollar went, too. You will sign a legally binding cessation agreement, drafted by my attorney, stating that you will, in perpetuity, cease and desist from using my name, my likeness, my home, or my story in any of your social media. No more millionaire sister content. You will not monetize my life. Paige's face went white. I had just cut off her only remaining source of income. And 3, I said. You, Paige, and you, Lorraine, and you, Dad, will all sign a contractual agreement stating that this is the final financial request you will ever make of me. Any future attempt to solicit funds, directly or through emotional manipulation, will be considered a breach of contract, and I will be legally authorized to collect all previously disbursed funds, including this one, with penalties. I leaned back. So, yes, we can talk about money, if you're willing to be completely transparent. Stop lying on the internet, and sign a legal document promising to never be this irresponsible again. Are you? They were, for the first time, completely silent. They were trapped. They had come for a tearful, easy payday, and I had presented them with a Securities and Exchange Commission filing. My father looked at me, his eyes desperate. He saw the path, and he knew they couldn't walk it, so he tried to find a side door. Lou, he stammered, leaning forward. This is too much. It's too cold. This is a family matter. Can't we just... What about the other place, your condo? The one Marla saw. I looked at him. The Cherry Creek condo. Yes, he said, a desperate, pathetic hope in his eyes. You don't need that one. You have all this. Why don't you just sell it. Give the money to Paige, and we're done. Clean, simple. No folders. I smiled. It was a cold, thin smile. I'm afraid that's not possible, Dad. Why, you own it. I do, but the condo is leveraged. I pledged it, as collateral, to a foundation I set up. A foundation? Lorraine asked, her voice suspicious. Yes, I said. It's a scholarship fund. It provides funding for therapy dogs for children in oncology wards. So, you see, you can't have the money from the condo. It's already been promised to sick children and golden retrievers, unless you're suggesting I take it from them. Paige just scoffed. A truly ugly sound. Oh my God, you are a piece of work. A therapy dog scholarship? It's just performance art. It's ethical performance. It's a risk assessment. Paige, Evan said, speaking for the first time. His voice was deep, calm, and cut through the room like a blade. He was holding a single, different folder. And yours is terrible. He stepped forward and placed his folder on the table. It was not like mine. It was a corporate risk analysis. What you call performance art, Evan said. We call strategic diversification of assets. Lucy has structured her life to be invulnerable to high-risk, low-reward actors, like you. He looked at Paige. My company is in the rehab space. I analyze risk every day. You, Paige, present an uninsurable liability. Your business plan is emotional consensus. Your financial strategy is extortion of relatives. You have no assets. You have a high burn rate, and you have a history of default. No one on earth would give you a loan. This meeting is over. Evan, wait, I said. I held up my hand. There is one more thing, one more offer. They all looked at me. I looked at Paige, directly at her. The boys, I said. Your 2 sons. Lorraine brightened. Yes, the boys, your nephews. I am willing, I said, to set up a custodial college fund, a 529. I will fund it. It will be for their education and only their education. The money will be paid directly to the university. When they are 18, It will be under my sole control until that time. Oh, Lucy, my father said, tears in his eyes. That's so generous. It's not generous, I said. It's conditional. It is conditional on one simple, non-negotiable term. You, Paige, and you, Lorraine, must stop, immediately and forever, using them as leverage. What? Paige said. Using them as a reason to ask for money, using them as a shield for your bad decisions, using them as your why for needing my help. The second I hear, you have to help, for the children. The offer is void. The second you try to use them to get cash now, the fund is dissolved. Their education is secure. If you agree to stop weaponizing them, do you understand? That was the one that broke Lorraine, the implication, the coldness, the truth. She stood up, her entire body shaking, her face a mask of purple rage. How dare you? She shrieked, her voice echoing in the vaulted room. How dare you talk to us this way? How dare you talk to her that way? I raised you. I was your mother when your real one walked out. I fed you, I clothed you, we loved you, and this cold, monstrous thing, this is how you repay me. I stood up, too. We were now eye to eye. You didn't raise me, Lorraine, I said, my voice empty of heat. You managed me. You didn't love me. You loved what I could do for you. You fed me, and you clothed me, and you kept the receipts. You raised me conditionally, and I am, finally, declining the terms. This is betrayal, Paige whispered, her eyes wide. This is you betraying your family. No. Paige, I said, turning to her. Betrayal is 2 years of silence. Betrayal is a text message, read and ignored. Betrayal is showing up at my door, not to ask, how are you, but to ask, how much do you have? Betrayal is only ever calling when you need something. Lucy, my father said. He was crying now, real, silent tears, running down his face. She's right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. 2 years ago, when you left, I was a coward. I should have called. I'm so sorry. Lou, his apology, so late, so useless, hit me, and for a second, a single, agonizing second, I softened. I saw my dad, just my dad, old and broken and trapped. I know, Dad, I whispered. It doesn't matter, Lorraine screamed. It doesn't matter. This is what matters. This house, sell this, this ridiculous, wasteful palace, and give your family a part of it. It's too much for you. You don't deserve it. I can't, I said. What do you mean? You can't. I mean, I legally cannot. This house, this land, it's not mine. They stopped. What do you mean? It's not yours? Greg asked, wiping his eyes. I mean, it is held in an irrevocable trust, the Snowlight Trust. It's an independent legal entity. It cannot be sold. It cannot be leveraged. It cannot be touched. It is protected by about 50 pages of legal code. From exactly this, from you, you can't take it. You can't ask for it. You can't even sue for it. It is not an asset. It is a fortress, and you are at the gate. You are not getting in. This was the fact they couldn't process. The condo was a loss. The cash was a loss. But the house, the $10 million prize, was an illusion. It wasn't real. Lorraine's face crumpled. She switched tactics. The rage was gone, and the ultimate guilt trip began. So, that's it, she whispered, tears now rolling down her face. You've left us. You've abandoned us. After everything. You're going to let your family, your father, just fall. We'll be homeless. We'll be nothing. She was sobbing, a full, body-racking, performative sob, aimed at my father's weak heart. I let her cry. I waited, and when she was done, gasping for air, I reached into my folder. I pulled out the last document. It was a single, folded letter, on the letterhead of a Denver psychiatrist. "I'm not abandoning you, Lorraine," I said, holding the letter. "I am protecting myself." "What? What is that?" Greg asked. "This is a letter from my therapist," I said. "I've been in therapy for 3 years, ever since my first year here, and this is a summary of my diagnosis." I unfolded it. Exhaustion, chronic anxiety, and complex post-traumatic stress disorder, resulting from, and I quote, "long-term emotional and financial exploitation from a dependent family system." I held up the letter. This is your receipt, Lorraine. This is what you cost me. You are, in the medical and legal opinion of experts, a clear and present danger to my mental and emotional health, and I am, finally, following medical advice and removing the threat. The room was completely silent. The only sound was Nova, who had come to sit by me, her head on my knee. Evan stood up. "I think," he said, "we're going to take a 15-minute recess, give you all time to breathe, and to review the proposals." He walked over to me, put his hand on my back, and guided me, and Nova, toward the library. We returned in exactly 15 minutes. They hadn't moved. They were just sitting there, broken. I stood in front of them, Nova at my side. Evan stood by the wall. "You have 2 options," I said, my voice final. "Option A. You accept the non-financial support package, the consultation, the classes, and B, you accept the conditional education fund for the boys. You sign the cessation agreement, you sign the transparency agreement, and we begin to build a new, professional, boundary-filled relationship. Or, Option B. You get nothing, you walk out of this house, and I change the gate code, and you never, ever hear from me again. The choice is yours. Support, with rules, or nothing at all." Lorraine was just staring at me. Her eyes, they weren't on me. They were over my shoulder, confused, and scared. She was looking at the small, black, domed camera in the corner of the ceiling, the one I had installed for security. That was, at this very moment, recording her. Its tiny, red, active light was on. "You," she whispered, pointing. You're recording this." "Of course," I said. "For safety, and for clarity, I am, as I've said, a compliance manager. I always keep a record." That was it. The last trick, the last lie, the last manipulation. She had been performing, not for me, but for a jury. And she had just realized the footage was damning. Paige let out a sound. It wasn't a sob, it was a snap, a sound of a cord, stretched too far, finally breaking. "That's it," she said, her voice dead. "Forget it. It's over." She stood up. She was clumsy, grabbing her purse, pulling her crying kids. "Mom," she said, her voice hollow. "Get up. We're leaving." Lorraine looked at her, confused. "But, Mom, now, let's go." Paige's voice was flat, empty of all its usual fire. "It's not worth it. She's not ours anymore. She's not family. Let's just go." She had, in a single sentence, finally, given up. She had realized she was in a game she could not, ever, win. I hadn't just built a house. I had built a legal system, and she was on the wrong side of it. They did not, in the end, take the folders. The exit was a silent, clumsy, broken retreat. Paige, her face a mask of hollow defeat, pulled her sons by their arms. Greg, looking gray and shrunken, fumbled with the untouched paper bag of bear claws. leaving it on the coffee table like a pathetic, failed offering. Lorraine was the last to stand. She retrieved her purse, her movements stiff, her face white and hard, and she did not look at me. I did not escort them. I stood in the massive doorway, the cold mountain air washing over my feet as they piled into the small, inadequate rental car. Evan stood a few feet behind me, a silent, solid presence. The engine turned over, a weak, tinny sound in the vast silence. The car crunched on the heated slate of the motor court and began its slow, winding descent down the long driveway. As they navigated the first switchback, the car was still visible. I saw my father. He was in the back seat, dwarfed by his grandson's car seats. He twisted his entire body around, his hand and face pressed against the rear glass. Even from that distance, I could see his eyes. They were not angry. They were not sad. They were a look of pure, agonizing, desperate pleading. It was a look that begged for a chance he knew he had just annihilated. It was the look of a man watching his only lifeboat sail away. The car disappeared behind a stand of blue spruce. I pulled the heavy walnut door closed, the latch engaged with a soft, definitive thud. I turned. The house was silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the radiant heating. Evan was watching me, his expression unreadable, giving me the space to be whatever I needed to be. I walked past him, to the center of the great room. I stood before the massive wall of glass. The sun was beginning its descent, and the valley below, already deep in shadow, looked soft, like blue velvet. The peaks of the mountains on the far side were catching the last light, turning them a deep, bruised, impossible purple. I waited for the crash, the adrenaline shakes, the wave of guilt, the old, familiar, toxic rush of having been mean. I felt nothing. I put my hand on the cool glass. I listened, not to the house, but to my own body. My heart was beating, a slow, steady, even thump, thump, thump. It was calm. It was the calm of a problem solved, of a system locked down, of an audit completed. My phone, which I had left on the coffee table, lit up. The screen glowed in the dimming room. The focus mode I had set during my last family encounter was still on, but the notifications were stacking up, visible on the lock screen. A missed call from Dad, a missed call from Dad, a missed call from Dad, and then a long, solid wall of blue text bubbles. It wasn't a message, it was a novel, a confession. I sat on the sofa, the one they had just vacated, and I read it. It was the first, last, and only detailed apology I would ever receive from Greg White. It was a torrent of words, of regret, of weakness. He wrote, "I let you down. I let her. I let them. I let everyone use you as a shield. Lucy. I have been a coward since the day your mother left. I was a coward then, and I was a coward today. I sat on that couch in Michigan, and I let Lorraine burn through our retirement to fund Paige's fantasy, and I said nothing. I sat on your couch today, and I listened to her demand your home, and I said nothing. I bought peace, my entire life. I bought it with your happiness. I am so sorry. I am sorry for all the years I wasn't a father. I see now. I see what I've lost. I am so sorry. Lou, it was everything I had ever wanted to hear, and it was 10 years too late." As I was staring at the words, a new notification slid down from the top of the screen. A new, incoming voice memo from Stepmother. My stomach tightened into a cold, hard knot. I motioned for Evan. He sat beside me, his presence a warm, solid counterweight. I put the phone on the table between us. I pressed play. The speaker crackled to life. First, the sound of an airport, tinny and chaotic. Then, her voice. It was wet, scratchy, and broken. "Lucy," a long, shuddering sniffle. "Lucy, honey, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know who you are anymore. We're at the airport. The boys are hungry. Lucy and Paige. She's a wreck. We can't. A choked sob. We can't even afford the baggage fees to get our suitcases home. The rental car. Lucy, please, I'm begging you. Just enough to get us home. Don't be this person. Please, don't do this to us. Evan and I looked at each other. She had learned nothing. Her apology. Her confession. It was just a new angle of attack. It was a negotiation. Even her rock bottom was a performance. I picked up the phone. I closed the voice memo, deleting it without a second thought. It was incompatible data. It was a virus. But Greg's text, that was something else. It was a different kind of data. It was sad, and it was weak, but it was honest. I couldn't reply to the emotional confession, but I could reply to the implied question, "Is there any way back?" I typed. My reply was short. It was precise. It was a protocol. Dad, I have received your message. If you are serious about having any kind of relationship, there are 3 non-negotiable conditions. 1, you will respect my boundaries, always. 2, you will never, ever bring the children into a financial negotiation again. 3, if you wish to speak to me, it will be alone, without Paige or Lorraine. This is the only path. The choice is yours. I hit send. Evan watched me put the phone down, his expression serious. Are you okay? He asked. I thought about it. The purple mountains, the sad text, the manipulative voice memo. I'm sad, I said, and the admission felt strange and clean. I'm sad that this is what it is. I'm sad that my father is a coward, and my stepmother is a black hole. But I looked at him, and I felt the truth of it. I'm not weak. I don't feel weak. I feel stable. But I'm sad. Sad is appropriate, he said, taking my hand. Sad is a hell of a lot better than depleted. My phone pinged again, a text from Aunt Marla. Honey, my phone is blowing up from your cousins. Paige must be telling her story. I have a terrible feeling I know exactly what happened. I am so sorry. Lucy, if you need me, I will fly out there and I will stand in the middle. Just say the word. I smiled. A real smile. I'm okay, Aunt Marla. I typed back. The audit is complete, but thank you. The audit, as it turned out, was not quite complete. The next morning, Evan brought his laptop to the kitchen island. You need to see this, he said. He hit play. It was Paige. She had taken all the footage from her phone the drive up the switchback road, the panning shot of the great room, the clip of her sons being denied entry to the pool, and she had edited it. It was a masterpiece of manipulative storytelling. It was titled, I visited my millionaire sister's resort, and she kicked us out. The video was a montage of my wealth, intercut with her, crying, in what was clearly the airport bathroom. We just wanted to see her. She wept to her followers. My boys, they just wanted to swim. And she's changed. She's not one of us anymore. She implied I was cold, cruel, and had gotten my money through nefarious means. She never mentioned the folders. She never mentioned the debt. She was the victim, and I was the monster in the $10 million castle. The old me would have been mortified, humiliated. I would have paid her anything to make it stop. I just sighed. She's defaming me, I said. While using footage she took of my private property and my minor nephews, without my consent. Exactly, Evan said. He was already on his phone. And this is no longer a family matter. This is a public breach. He wasn't calling me. He was calling his startup's legal counsel. The process was not emotional. It was clinical. It was beautiful. Evan's lawyer, a woman who specialized in tech litigation and intellectual property, was ruthless. She didn't send a cease and desist to Paige. She sent a formal Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown notice, combined with a privacy violation claim, directly to the platform's legal department. She attached the deed to the Snowlight Trust, proving ownership. She attached the time-stamped security footage from my cameras, proving Paige was filming without consent in a private residence. Within 24 hours, the video was gone. Paige's account was suspended for violating terms of service. It wasn't a fight. It was a procedure. 3 days passed. 3 days of absolute, perfect silence. My father did not reply to my conditions. Paige was, presumably, offline and raging. And from Lorraine, nothing. Then, on the 4th morning, a text. It was from a number I didn't recognize. "Lucy, it's Lorraine. I'm using a friend's phone. Can I please see you? Just me. Not for them. For me. Please. At a cafe. In town. I'm still here. At a motel." I stared at the message. This was a variable I had not calculated. Just for me. This was a new script. "Where?" I typed. She named a small, anonymous coffee shop in Aspen. "Noon." I went alone. I told Evan where I was, but I told him to stay. This was the final addendum to the audit. I got there at noon. I ordered a black coffee and sat at a small table in the back. She was late. Of course. She walked in at 12:20, and I almost didn't recognize her. The Lorraine who had invaded my home was a woman of ambition and rage. Her hair sprayed into a helmet, her face a mask of makeup and righteousness. The woman who shuffled into this coffee shop looked old. She was wearing a cheap, pilled sweatshirt and jeans. Her hair was stringy, pulled back in an elastic. She wore no makeup. She looked defeated, exhausted. She sat opposite me, her hands shaking. She didn't order anything. She just sat. The performance was over. There was no live stream. There was no audience. This, I realized, was the real Lorraine. You look good," she whispered, not meeting my eyes. "The house. It's like a fortress." "It was designed to be," I said. She flinched. She looked down at her hands, which were twisting a paper napkin into shreds. "I've been at a Motel 6 for 3 days," she said, her voice flat. "Greg, he flew home, with Paige and the boys. He left me here. He said I had to be the one, to fix what I broke." This was new. I'm afraid, Lucy," she whispered, and a single, real tear, not a performance tear, but a small, gray, miserable tear slid down her cheek. I've always been afraid. I was afraid of being poor. Your father. He was never good with money. He was weak, and I was afraid of being the evil stepmother. I wanted Paige to be a success, so I could be a success, so people wouldn't look at me like that. Her fear had been the engine. Her fear had birthed a lifetime of control. Her fear had tried to eat me alive. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I just felt clear. And I said, my voice just as quiet, was afraid of disappearing. I was afraid that if I wasn't useful, I wouldn't exist. I was afraid of becoming you. We looked at each other. 2 fears, sitting at a table. Neither one had won. I reached into my bag. I pulled out a simple, white envelope. Her eyes darted to it, a flicker of the old hope, cash. I pushed it across the table. "This," I said, "is not money." Her face fell. "This is what I offered Paige. This is the list of professional resources, bankruptcy lawyers, retail consultants. This is a list of job placement agencies in Michigan for women over 50. And this is a one-way, non-refundable bus ticket from here to Denver, and from Denver to Michigan. That's all I have for you." She looked at the envelope. She didn't open it. She just put her hand on it, her fingers tracing the paper, and she began to cry. Not the loud, wailing sobs she had used in my house. This was a quiet, hopeless, exhausted weeping. She was a woman who had run out of moves in a game she had designed, and for the first time in my entire life, she wasn't looking at me like I was a bank. She was looking at me like I was the only person in the world who had ever told her the truth. She was looking at me like a person who was setting a new law. It took 1 week of absolute, unbroken silence after I put Lorraine on a bus with a list of job agencies. Evan and I watched the snow melt and refreeze. I did my work. I ran my audits. I waited. Then the call came. Not from Lorraine, but from my father. His voice was not weak, not angry. It was just empty, resigned. He asked, on behalf of what remained of the family, for one final meeting. He used the words, "To choose the final path." I agreed, but I dictated the terms of this final audit. "It will be at my house," I said, my voice clear over the phone line. 1 week from today, 10 us. And there are 2 non-negotiable conditions. Dad, a lawyer, he whispered. No, condition 1. The entire meeting will be officially recorded, audio and video. Condition 2, I am bringing in a third-party witness. Who? Aunt Marla, I said, and I hung up. The day arrived. It was a bitterly cold, painfully bright morning. Evan and I had not prepared a casual living room. We had prepared a boardroom. We moved the massive 12-foot walnut dining table into the center of the great room, positioning it directly in front of the glass wall. The morning sun hit the fresh snow outside and reflected onto the polished wood, illuminating the table in a glare so bright it was like a surgical light, a spotlight, a stage. Aunt Marla was already there. She sat at the far end, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. She looked pale, but resolute. I sat at the head of the table. Evan stood, a silent sentinel, by the large, dark television screen on the wall. The cameras, in the corners of the room, were on. Their small, red lights were glowing. At 10 a.m., on the dot, the doorbell chimed. They filed in. Greg, Lorraine, Paige. The children were not with them. This was not a social call. This was a deposition. They looked at the room, at the table, at Marla. They were immediately, visibly, unnerved. This was not a home. It was a courtroom. Sit, I said. It was not a request. They sat, all 3 of them, on the opposite side of the table, facing me, blinded by the light of the snow. There was no small talk. Paige, who had apparently spent the last week nursing her rage back to health, opened the proceedings. Her victimhood had been replaced by a raw, ugly confidence. "We are done with the folders," she snapped, her voice hard. "We are done with the classes, the lawyers, the offers. This is the last time. You are going to give me the $42,000 in cash. A cashier's check will be fine, and you are going to give it to me right now." I just looked at her. "And if I do not, Paige," a nasty, practiced smile spread across her face. "If you don't, I'm going to tell the truth, all of it, not the little video that got taken down, the real story about how you abandoned your dying father." My father, sitting next to her, flinched. "About how you stole his money to build this freak show, about how your boyfriend is a corporate shark who helped you hide it. I am going to tell my followers, and every blog that will listen, exactly what kind of monster you are. I will do it every single day, for the rest of your life, until you pay. You think that's blackmail? Fine. I call it justice." I did not reply to her. I did not look at her. I just nodded. Once, to Evan. Evan pressed a button on a remote. The massive screen on the wall, the one they had assumed was a television, flickered to life. It was not a movie. It was a document. A legal, binding, online agreement. "That," Evan said, his voice cutting through the silent room, "is the privacy, slander, and defamation agreement that you, Paige, electronically signed when you settled the copyright dispute to get your social media account reinstated last week. Our lawyer was very, very clear on the terms." He used a laser pointer. "As you can see, you agreed that any further discussion of Ms. White, her property, or her personal life constitutes willful defamation. You agreed that all such discussions are, and I quote, False and malicious. He zoomed in, to the bottom of the document. To a small, digital box. And that, he said, is your electronic signature, Paige L. Miller, dated last Tuesday. Paige stared at the screen. She was white. You? You tricked me. No, I said, my voice quiet. You just, once again, failed to read the terms and conditions, a mistake you seem to make in all your business dealings. Stop it, Lorraine burst out, her voice a high-pitched shriek. Her hands were shaking. Just stop it. All of this, the cameras, the screens, the papers, we are a family. Paige turned on her, her eyes blazing. This is your fault. You said, enough. My father's voice. It wasn't a yell. It was a crack, a sound of something breaking. He slammed his hand on the table. He put his other hand over Paige's, pinning it, silencing her. Paige, you will be silent. And for the first time in her life, she was. The room was still. I picked up my own remote. The screen changed. Evan's legal document was replaced by my final slide. The conditional support package, the title read. Final offer. This is what I offered you, I said, my voice resonating in the quiet. It is the last time you will see it. 1, I will fund the consultants. 2, I will fund the management classes. 3, I will provide a structured third-party roadmap for your debt repayment, which you will follow. And 4, I will, as I said, create the college fund for your sons. The money will be paid directly to their schools. I clicked. And, I said, here are the conditions, the ironclad conditions. 1, you will never, ever touch or ask to touch any of my assets, money, or property again. 2, you will never make a public appeal for funds, referencing me or my life, again. 3, the default is over. You will never assume my time, my energy, or my home is yours to take. This is the line. I clicked, and the document vanished. Evan placed 3 identical, leather-bound folders on the table. He slid them across the polished wood. In front of Greg, in front of Lorraine, in front of Paige. You sign the commitment, I said. You get the help, you refuse, and this meeting and this relationship is over. Forever. It's unfair, Paige finally spat, the words tearing out of her. You sit here, in your glass box, and you dictate, you make us sign papers, like we're criminals. It was Aunt Marla who spoke. Her voice was not loud, but it filled the room. It was the steel of a kind person who has finally seen too much. Unfair, she asked, looking straight at Paige. Paige, honey, what exactly is more unfair than 2 years of absolute unforgiving silence? What is more unfair than ignoring this girl's text that she was leaving her entire life, so you could all eat the pie she baked? Paige flinched as if Marla had struck her. I am the witness, Marla said, placing her hands flat on the table. And I am witnessing this. This is the most generous, most structured, most kind act of boundary setting I have ever seen in my life, and you, all of you, are calling it unfair. You should be on your knees, thanking God she has this much grace left. The silence that followed was absolute. Dad, I said. I pushed a pen toward him. My father looked at the folder. He looked at me, his eyes full of a terrible, bottomless shame. His hand was shaking. He uncapped the pen. He opened the folder, and he signed his name. He pushed the paper back toward me. I agree to the boundaries. Lucy. Lorraine, I said. Lorraine was crying. The quiet, gray, hopeless tears I had seen in the coffee shop. She picked up the pen. She looked at Paige, a long, agonizing look, and she signed. Paige, I said. Paige just stared at the pen. Her face was a mask of pure, toxic hate. No, I won't. I will not be managed by her. She crossed her arms. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I stood up. I walked to the massive glass wall. I placed my hand on the control panel. I pressed the button. The wall slid open. A 10-foot gap, opening to the high altitude, freezing morning, a blast of Arctic. Mountain wind flooded the room. It was not a breeze. It was a physical, violent thing. It ripped across the table, scattering papers, making the pens roll. The reflection of the snow was blinding. It was the sound of 1,000 screaming voices. It was the sound of pure, cold judgment. I stood in the opening, the wind tearing at my hair. The cold so sharp it was like needles. I looked at Paige. "No signature," I yelled, my voice clear and strong over the roar of the wind. "No relationship, no college fund for your sons, no help. This is the door. You choose." She stared at me. She stared at her mother, who was crying. She stared at her father, who was looking at his hands. She saw no allies. She was, finally, completely alone with her choice. She let out a sound. It was not a word. It was a sound, a bitter, ugly, broken laugh that the wind snatched from her mouth and threw out into the valley. She lunged forward. She grabbed the folder. She grabbed the pen. She didn't sign her name. She stabbed it onto the paper, a jagged, angry, violent line, a scar. She threw the pen down. "There, are you happy now? You bitch." I pressed the button. The glass door slid silently, inexorably, closed. The roar of the wind vanished. The room was, once again, perfectly, unnaturally, silent. At that exact moment, the doorbell chimed. Everyone flinched. Evan, who had not moved, looked at his watch. "That," he said, his voice calm, "will be the car I called for them, to take them to the airport. Their flight leaves in 2 hours. This time, it was different. There was no chaos. There was no screaming. They stood, like 3 defeated, gray ghosts. Greg picked up his coat. Lorraine zipped hers, her eyes on the floor. Paige just radiated a cold, silent hate. Evan opened the front door. The driver was waiting. A polite, uniformed man. Greg walked past me. He paused. "Thank you, Lucy," he whispered, and he walked out. Paige walked past, her shoulder brushing mine. A final, petty act of aggression. She said nothing. Lorraine was the last. She stopped in front of me. She looked small, broken. I signed it," she whispered. "I know," I said. I want to. I ask," she stammered, the words painful. "To learn how to be a mother. Again." It was a question. It was a request. The first she had ever made that was not for money. It was a request for learning. I looked at her, this woman, who had cost me so much. This woman, who had signed the paper. I just nodded. Once. It was not forgiveness. It was not an invitation. It was not a promise. It was just an acknowledgement, a request received. She turned and walked out the door. Evan closed it. The heavy walnut door. The bolt slid home. The sound was final. Aunt Marla let out a breath she looked like she had been holding for an hour. "My God! Lucy!" I didn't answer. I walked away from the table. I walked away from the signed papers. I leaned my back against the warm, solid, walnut wall of the library. Nova, who had been hiding, came and pushed her old gray head into my hand. I buried my fingers in her fur. The house was silent. The wind was gone. My phone pinged. A quiet, single chime. I picked it up. It was an email, a simple, automated confirmation. From Lucy White to Bright Futures College Fund. It was the receipt, for the initial, large deposit into the custodial account for my nephews. The transfer had been pre-scheduled, timed for the exact moment the meeting was supposed to end. The funds had been sent, directly to the school's account. Evan came over. He had a soft cashmere throw in his hands. He draped it over my shoulders. He looked at the 3 signed folders, now stacked neatly on the table. He looked at me, leaning against the wall, my hand in my dog's fur. "You did it," he said. and his voice was full of a quiet, profound awe. "You did the thing that most people, in their entire lives, never dare to do." I looked up, past him, through the massive glass wall. The storm system, the one that had been sitting on us, had finally, truly, passed. The snow had stopped. The oppressive, heavy, gray sky had been scoured away by the wind I had let in, and in its place, over the peaks of the purple mountains, was a single, defiant, brilliant streak of blue. I picked up my phone. I went to my chat groups. I found the old, toxic thread, the one labeled family. I looked at the name. I held my finger down. A menu popped up. Delete and block all members. I pressed it. I opened a new, blank note, a clean page. I typed a new title. People who actively love me. Aunt Marla, Evan, my friends, Nova. It was a short list, but it was a real one. It was a true one. I closed the phone. I felt the last, tiny, frayed cord of obligation, the one that had tethered me to Michigan, finally snap. I felt the vibration of it in my chest, like the ringing of a bell, a boundary bell, clear and true. The story was locked. There was no epilogue. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know. Where are you listening from? Drop it in the comments below. Let's connect and share our thoughts. Please, if this story resonated with you, subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear it.